So we're just going to reset the room for our panel session. So I'm going to invite back to the stage Prashant from Cisco, joined by Prashant from Sekuro, and also Sanya Murray from Aspen Medical, who is the Chief Technology and Security Officer. You get to have fun on both sides of the boardroom table. So welcome everybody for our next panel.
Thank you, everyone. I'm Prashant. I'm going to be moderator, and I'm glad because I don't have to present, and I only get to ask questions. So there you go. Thank you, Prashant, for making international trip, and Sanya coming into state just for us. So these guys have afforded a lot of time for us, so appreciate that. Really thankful. Prashant, you spoke about a few things which touched upon business resilience, and Sanya, in your organization, being in health sector, I guess, you've been through multiple things. Now, the theme of the panel is House of Mirrors, going with the theme of Luna Park. We spoke about business resilience, we spoke about innovation, we spoke about looking forward. We're talking about mirrors and looking behind and reflection. Like, we need to know from your organization's perspective, your journey from a compliance regulations point of view. What are the things that we should know that you've learned, which as a business we could take on and look for improvements and betterments. So just taking two keywords, business resilience and business growth. Maybe you can start with you, Prashant. Like, what's your reflection on those two key things in your organization's perspective?
Tied to compliance. So business resilience, I will start more on the compliance side of things. If we go and look back 20 years ago, the only compliance term that used to exist or be of relevance mostly to publicly traded companies, and I'm talking about an organization, US was SOX, Sarbanes-Oxley. This is financial reporting. Equivalent of those were there across the globe. But as the whole landscape has evolved, and primarily because what used to be mostly an on-prem play from customers, where we are Cisco, we used to build routers and switches and ship them off to customers, and customers would host it at their end. But that has evolved. That has evolved across the globe, not just with Cisco, but every other organization. And with the advent of cloud, now the data from the customer side is on a cloud managed by a service provider like us, like Cisco. So the questions around compliance and security has evolved from customer side. They're asking, I'm no longer in control of my data. I'm sending it over to a cloud which is managed by you, and you're controlling my data. How do I know that you have the right commitments towards security, availability, resiliency, and all those factors? So if I were to look at this as a mirror, I think all these frameworks, including IRAP, that are evolving, there is a theme behind that. Every country, every certification that is evolving, the theme is basically enabling a cloud service provider like Cisco and others to be able to have the right controls in place, in essence, to tell the story back to customers that we are committing to protect your data by doing so and so and so. And in turn, if our services go down, we have the resiliency factors in place to bring the service back up to the same level or better. From a reflective mode perspective, for me, what was important is first things is like understanding like what exactly are we committing back to customers and why. And most of the times compliance used to be looked as a paper box, like check the box exercise on paper. It's no longer that. It's actually a make or break. That's how, especially for upcoming companies, like if you don't have compliance, your competitor is putting a bunch of paperwork and certifications saying, we have it. And customers are looking at it because that's a third-party attestation. So looking at that and coming up with the right priorities, especially for internal controls wise, and doing the right thing. One of the best thing I've loved so far in terms of compliance evolution, personally, is the fact that most of the compliance regulations are asking cloud service providers to publicly commit to the SLAs of uptime. It never used to exist, but including now they're also asking that divulge your incidents of materiality back to the public sector. So these are very important. But if you are not doing the right thing, you cannot commit to it. That's period, right? So because it's pushing in that direction, having the reflection to make sure that the right controls are in place, so that enables us operationally to commit to these SLAs publicly, I think that's the best thing that is happening.
Sure, no, thank you so much for that. I mean, some of the things that you mentioned are quite obvious, but I mean, easily said that done, but I guess you've gone through the hard journey of getting things in place, and the journey is continuous, as you mentioned. Sanya, how about you? Like health industry, a lot of regulators, compliances, everything hanging over your head.
I'm going to flip this. I'm going to flip it around a little bit and talk about our journey because, and I'm going to use, I love analogies and stories, and of course I love French champagne. So I'm going to, use that as our analogy today. If you don't know champagne, I'll educate you on that as well as IRAP. So I met you, Prashant, because of our IRAP assessment, and our journey started with drinking a bit of Moscato, quite cheap and nasty, sweet, very sweet. You like the taste. And I think that was us doing a bit of Essential 8 and, getting our thing, getting it, in place. And then we found Yellowtail and a bit of Prosecco. Not that expensive, but
I hope people don't start leaving the room. It's not time yet.
Not time yet. I'll tell you. I'm getting to the point. So that was us then embarking on ISO 27001, and then we met some sophisticated people. Now that was our French champagne moment, right? We were asked to do an IRAP assessment. Now, an IRAP assessment is, as you know, it's very Australian, and because it's expensive, it has to be good, right? Like French champagne. Once you pop the cork on IRAP, it's like French champagne. If you don't drink it, it's a very expensive mistake, right? But once you learn how to enjoy it, which is a little bit of a overstatement, but it's a bit like French champagne. It prepares your palate for other delicacies. So, then you get your NIST framework and you get your, your ISO 27001, your FedRAMP, all of that. So, and then, once you've learned to enjoy that, it becomes infinite. So we've heard today about infinite in perpetuity. It's not something you do once, because business resiliency is something you work on continuously. So for me, and I want to talk about IRAP because it was tough. It left a bit of a bitter taste in your mouth when you start, but once you get into it and working with a company that can really help you through that, it becomes a way of almost life, and you discover, other things and how you can put all of those things into practice. And you have to do a lot of technical work. I know you came back with our first report, and I'm very honest. I was like, oh my goodness, there's a lot to do here. But going through all of that, going through that compliance work is just, for me, it sets you up for success into the future. It builds that business resiliency. And if you look in the mirror and you think, yes, it was hard at one time, it was the right thing to do, because when we now look in the mirror, we are much more resilient and mature and robust in all of the frameworks that we can apply now.
So I'm going to use Sanya's analogy, Prashant, and I'm going to ask you, did you ever stand in front of the mirror and say, mirror, mirror on the wall, which standard is best of all? Or which champagne is best of all, I should say?
I haven't.
Okay, good.
Well, I will put it this way. We have gone through IRAP, and I completely agree with what Sanya says. IRAP is a very, very, I will say, in-depth analysis compared to other certifications. There are other global ones also which look for that level of depth. The one difference that IRAP has compared to other ones, I think I'll put it on the same plate as a FedRAMP certification in US public sector, because IRAP does a risk-based or a determination depending on the data types that you are going to be offering to or handling on behalf of the customer. So you have multiple levels. I believe one of the levels is you can have services in Australia but also have like global tenant connections. And one level higher is everything needs to be in Australian soil itself. So that level of scrutiny, that level of there is protected, official, secret, top secret might have changed now. I think that level of scrutiny that exists in IRAP is as you go through this, it's an ongoing journey. The first time we went through IRAP, I completely resonate with what you said. Like, there are, oh my God, so many things are like that we need to fix, but then you go through the motions again and again, and at one point you realize that, yeah, you know what, we can go to a level higher because the opportunity exists out there. So I will definitely put IRAP at the same par as something like a FedRAMP. Yeah.
Excellent. Okay. But so Sanya, coming to you, and maybe Prashant, I'll get your perspective as well. When there are regulators hanging over your head saying, let's do this, and when it comes to something like IRAP, where you have, and I'm sure some of the sizes here must have dealt with it, IRAP is not a black and white standard. It's like, it depends kind of answer to most of the things. How do you explain to your regulators the risk profile that you would have, and how do you go through the journey of convincing them that yes, what you have done is right and this is what it is?
I think it's not just the regulators, but the customers. So we are in the health industry, and we specialize in pandemics. So we were really active in COVID. And we worked with, and we already work with federal government. So we used to, complying with some heavy compliance requirements that's pushed upon us. But we had a federal government client that required an IRAP assessment. Now, for a health company, that's really odd, isn't it? I don't know a lot of health companies that have IRAP assessments. So the regulator is one thing, because you can have a risk-based assessment with a regulator and you can assure them that you're doing the right thing. When a client requires that as part of a contract, you have no choice. You either do it or you don't, you get the contract or you don't. So I think for us, it's one thing to satisfy the regulator. It was another thing when our client said, you have to do an IRAP assessment. So we were in a position that we were really fortunate enough that we could afford it, because I don't think small companies can, it's already hard to do all of the other, requirements. Companies even struggle with essential aid. I think a lot of people in the room know that if you look at essential aid, even small and medium companies even struggle with that. So when you implement IRAP, there's a lot involved with that. So what I like about IRAP is that it is black and white, but there's room for you to prove how you are meeting some of the IRAP requirements. And I think that to me is great, because once you've put something in place, you can then translate it into the NIST cybersecurity framework. It then translates to ISO 27001, to HIPAA, to FedRAMP. So it is a really good baseline, to start that whole compliance journey. But yes, what regulators, one thing, clients demanding is a bit of another conundrum.
Sure. Yeah, Prashant, I mean, you must be dealing with this on a global scale, day in, day out. But when it comes to convincing and talking to people about your risk profile, like what sort of challenges do you think you would have, keeping the standards in perspective?
Yeah, I think most of the certifications can be broadly put into two different categories, and one is what Sanya touched on. It's a position of your risk management. That's what certifications are asking for. And there is another spectrum, which is PCI, which is basically your pass that, or like you fail, right? So when usually it's in the first side of positioning of your risk management against the set of controls, like IRAP, FedRAMP, and some of these are classic examples, is MAP in Japan. I believe it's a discussion between four parties. Like, one is you as a customer who is actually going through the audit. Second is your external auditor who is performing the audit, who is assessing you against the controls. Third is usually the customer, who is your customer, who is actually requesting the audit itself. And the fourth one, usually the third and fourth could be the same, it's the federal agency, okay, who is your sponsor. So in this situation, most of the times, there are situations when we go through an audit and we're not actually meeting with the controls objective, but we look back and look at like what exactly is the risk that the control is asking to remediate. And then it's very likely that you have some compensating control, mitigating controls, other factors, technology, people, process, where the risk of the control itself is addressed. So taking a risk-focused mindset, usually with your third-party auditor, going back to the customer or the sponsoring agency and having that discussion, it's extremely helpful. Yeah. Okay, that's we do that. I think that's where I spend most, I would say 50% of my time on a day-to-day basis in these sort of sessions, and then the other half is with customers. But I think taking the risk-based mindset, which is exactly what these certifications are asking for, and having that conversation, because that's how you demonstrate that we understand what the certification is asking for, we're reducing the risk, this is how we are doing it. I think most of those discussions are pretty open here, and they're open to hear more from you.
So we reflected back a little bit on some of the things and the journey that you have now. Obviously, it's not going to change, and there are more hurdles coming your way. Obviously, good ones which you can navigate quite well. When we navigate through this maze of standards, regulations, and all, like what do you think businesses should be equipped with, navigate that maze? Like what are the ingredients or key things that they should know to be equipped with?
I reflect on the previous panel, the Harry Potter one, which I, by the way, loved. And
I'm not sure why we didn't have any.
yeah, where's my wand, Prashant? You're not, you know.
Yeah, where's
Where's the props?
Yeah.
But anyway, I think something that came out of that panel was knowing your business. So it has to be fit for purpose. It doesn't help that you do all of these compliance, compliances and regulations, and you comply with stuff if it isn't fit for purpose and you don't know what you're really protecting. We work globally, so we have to adhere to GDPR, and there's a whole range of things. And, but that fits our business, and that's right for our business. Even with IRAP, it was really hard for us to try and put a scope together of what IRAP should look like, because you cannot do IRAP across your whole business and all your systems. You have to have a really defined scope. So for me, I think is, and if I look back, reflecting in the mirror, is making sure that you know your business, but then define the scope of what you need to do. Because then, once you have a defined scope, you can work to that scope. And it's much easier to get a result then, and if you work to that set of requirements. If you just go and try and do everything, you're never going to get there.
Prashant, CCF 2.0?
CCF is definitely one of the means. Cisco's cloud controls framework, we utilize that heavily. That's pretty much the backbone for everything that Cisco does in the compliance space. Then, of course, spoke about the operational security stack. I think echoing what Sanya said about understanding the business, the one thing that I really preach for all my team members to do is understand, of course, the business is critical, but also understand the engineering teams and the language, the engineering language, right? Don't come in as a compliance external auditor sort of a mindset and do an audit. That's one way to get the certifications, but also I think you can take it a step further, understand the business, understand the technology, be a part of the technology. One of the themes I use with my teams, I'm starting to do it more and more, is get geeky, right? I mean, you know controls well, you know risk well, but then try to talk to the engineers in their own language and translate this engineering into this controls into an engineering language, get it implemented. You'll become their friends. You'll become a trusted business advisor. I think it's important for folks in the security and compliance space to evolve from compliance or security SMEs to trusted business advisor. I think that bridging that gap is critical, and that's what I always encourage my teams to do.
Sure. And throughout this journey, it's like your reflection back and moving forward. Obviously, you need to, customer is asking, yes, regulators asking, but there is a management hurdle that you need to get through every time within your respective organizations. Any key challenges that you have come across before, or some use cases that you can talk about?
Show me the money.
Yes.
So, as it was pointed out, I look after technology and cybersecurity, so I have internal conflict all day long of where do we spend our money. And I think, when I have to report to the board and the CEO, and they say to me, Sanya, look at the spend in IT. And I said, yes, look at where the cybersecurity has gone. And it's not just spending. I do want to say that you can keep on spending money and get nowhere. But I think the financial burden of having things in place like cyber insurance, again, which is mandated by our clients, some of our clients, it's not a bad thing. But cyber insurance it's just a little bit of a safety net if something goes wrong, right? So there's a lot of money involved, there's a lot of effort involved, and I think that's some of the challenges that we see is, you put more and more money, and will we ever teach our users not to click? That came out of the previous panel. If we can stop phishing, we run phishing simulations, and I did one for Cyber Awareness Month, and it was so bad. It was the worst one. It was just easy, and I thought I'm going to get no one, and I still got 2 2% of users. So I think we're working with humans, we're working in an ever-changing environment. You can't keep up. It feels like you can't keep up. And there's so much snake oil, and there's really good vendors here today, so I'm not talking to the vendors. But in the market, every day there's a new, potion that comes out that will solve your cyber problems. And then just the amount of money that you have to spend, and it's continuously managing the risks. You cannot go one day without looking at something or making sure that everything is intact with cybersecurity.
Excellent. Prashant, any key challenges with the management or challenge?
I think that's I would absolutely agree with what Sanya said, show me the money, follow the money, one trend. The other one is most of our business is also in the regulated space. So we have to meet with the regulations too. We are seeing an increase in legal regulatory compliance, right? In Europe, there is something called as NIS. If you do business in Europe, NIS standard 2 is becoming more and more prominent. It has nothing to do with you from selling more, but it's a regulation there, more of a regulation, where you have to comply with that as a cloud service provider or even an on-prem service provider to do business. It's an existential regulatory requirement. So both these together, following the money, having the opportunities, plus the regulatory compliance to exist in that market, both of these together create a good business story for us to tell our board and executive leadership that this is why the investment is needed.
Excellent. Coming to the end of the panel, I'm sure we can sit here till we open the champagne, Sanya.
Sure.
But just two things, if you can summarize each of you, your winning moments and key takeaway from your journey. Winning moments in your business throughout the journey, and some of the key takeaways for future.
I think the winning moment for us was when cybersecurity went from a department or a business unit to part of our culture. When people actually said, well, we're now a business resilient business, a cyber resilient business because it's part of our culture. And I think that to me was an aha moment. People get it. Everybody talks about it. It's no longer my job to tell people. We all live and breathe it every day.
Takes a lot,
yeah. Yeah, that was a real feel-good moment. Maybe because I speak so much, people are so sick of hearing it that they just say, yeah, we know.
You can add some champagne with that as well,
Absolutely.
I guess.
What was the other question? Forgot again.
Winning moment and key takeaway.
Oh, the key takeaway.
Yeah.
Keep on trying. It just, you know what, you're never going to be ahead in cyber. And I know they say it's not if but when. That makes you live in fear. I've lived in South Africa. They say it's not if you get hijacked, it's when you get hijacked. And that's not a good position to be in, right? So it's the same with cyber. We live with the not if but when. What I want to say is, if it happens, make sure you're ready. Make sure you can deal with it. Make sure you've practiced, you've exercised. My dad taught us self-defense, so we knew it. If it happened, we were ready. But, you need to get your self-defense for cyber in place. And, then when it happens, you'll be able to respond well.
Thank you, Sanya. Prashant?
Yeah, I think for me, I'll say that post GDPR, there was a term or a phrase that gained a lot of popularity. It was called as privacy by design. Since those days, the term shifting security left or security by design is gaining a lot of popularity. And I am right now of the opinion that it's time shifting compliance left. I think that's the time. And one thing I do at my org, which I see as a key win every time it happens, is I run compliance and security for my org. So we, whenever I have some of our team members go work with the engineering business units, and I sometimes get notes from engineering leaders that, hey, this person from your org, fantastic, can I have them as a solid member dotted lining into my staff? And that's a great win, because that's when they're starting to trust this, my org, our org, as a business partner rather than like a policing organization. That's how we can now sit in that engineering org, run tabletop exercises, give them security advice on an ongoing basis, and truly work on shifting security and compliance to left. That's key win moments for me. Key takeaways is, the whole industry is evolving. Certifications are evolving. They're not going to go quiet anytime soon. It's coming up more and more. More of certifications are becoming regulations. It's high time for other professionals in this room and our extended network to really think about how we can shift compliance and security both to left to bake resiliency into the DNA of engineering work.
Thank you so much, both of you. I guess working with both the organizations and yourself as well as leaders in the industry, I myself have learned a lot as to how organizations navigate through several challenges when it comes to compliance, regulations and all. And I'm sure I've learned a lot about champagne as well today. So I'm going to use that next time when I talk about standards. It's a better way to put your message across, I think. But sincerely, thank you both for your time. Really great to hear from you. And yeah, the crowd appreciates that. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Prashant.
Thank you.
Prashant?
Thanks, Sam.